Welcome, everyone. Now, in terms of today's agenda, um, we've got a case study, one of our case studies with Hello Healthcare Group, and we've got sort of TJ on the call and sort of talk us through that one. And then sort of after that, I'll be talking about what it means to be sort of a cloud-first business, sort of running through some of the benefits, some of the common mistakes and pitfalls to avoid if you're going on sort of a cloud transformation journey of your own. And then lastly, demonstrating that in action. Then I'll sort of hand over to Alex, one of our sort of security consultants here, who will sort of run you through some sort of cybersecurity 101 to talk about some of the cloud security technologies available using the Microsoft platform. Right, to kick things off, I'll hand over to TJ, who can talk all about the Hello Healthcare case study. Let me give you control.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm TJ Boper, and I am now the head of service and platforms at Kocho, but I was the ex-head of European service at McKesson and Hello. So yeah, 7 years in the organization, and started at the bottom and worked my way to the top, or close to the top, to understand the business and then help it through its transformation, and then finally jump over to Kocho. So that's a bit about my background. I'm trying to move to the next slide. Yeah. So who are Halo or Hello? So they are made up of an ex-McKesson organization. So McKesson at the time was a Fortune 5 company, one under Apple when I started. It consisted of three main businesses: AAH, and I'm going to go through these just to give you an example of how big they were and how important to our UK existence they were. So AH did 2 deliveries a day of medication. It was the UK's largest, I think it still is the UK's largest pharmaceutical provider and distributor. So it did 2 deliveries a day and to the same location around the UK. So to give you an example, Amazon, which everybody knows, does 1 delivery a day per location. So it doubled that up. It had twice the fleet, twice the deliveries, and it was relied on for the backbone of the UK. Lloyd's Pharmacy, at the time, was the UK's largest pharmacy, approximately 1,300 stores, and relied on by everybody to provide their prescriptions and their medication. And LPCH, which was a less known about service, but as important as the rest. It was nursing services, taking care of critically ill people. It created bespoke meds, things like chemo and food in controlled environments and warehouses. So it was one of the largest players in healthcare. So much so that as a group, if there was an impact to this organisation, it required government responses. This organisation in total had 50% of all the UK's COVID vaccines delivered, and I was fortunate to be one of the members that worked with the UK government and the army to get those into our warehouses and distributed. So that's who they were. Slight delay. Moving on. What was the challenge? So the European division of McKesson was sold off. The UK division was sold off to private equity, and somebody signed a 12-month TSA. Some bright spark decided that we could do it in 12 months to exit McKesson, their private cloud, and 2 data centers. This had to be done to the same security standard or better without customer impact. And they also decided, well, if we're doing all of that, why don't we exit the MSP at the same time? So we had all of these challenges within 12 months. There was a massive financial penalty in the millions of pounds per month if it went over that TSA. And as you can imagine, that equipment that we were migrating, moving out, distributing was all legacy equipment, AS400, SunSparks, in fact, to the point that the COO of Quadro had to dust off some of his old books to jump in there and assist. So numbers, there were over 8,000 end user workspace devices, over 180 apps, and the atmosphere was, we had to deal with quite almost hostile existing providers. The mindset was a challenge. We needed to move fast, and we needed to be agile. And the existing companies that were there to help us move along were behemoths. So as behemoths are, they were quite slow. The solution. So the solution was to use an agile methodology. We created a joint team between Kocho and Halo. We were one team. There was no divide. We worked together. We did daily meetings. There was no separation. So the goal was to, rather than move, it was migrate all of the apps out of the data centers, migration of all the core apps to Azure, which gave us the advantage of saving money and increasing security. There was a tenant and data migration to New 365 without impacting users or apps. So the business had to run throughout the whole of this, and we had to move things like, I'm sure we're not the only company that have ancient finance apps, and everything's attached to a macro that reaches out to an app that nobody knows about. So we had to unwind all that pasta and get to where we needed to be with minimal impact and optimum speed. We set up a first to third line service desk to take on the services from the existing MSP. And we also had to set up a NOC. Remember, this is all within 12 months, up and running, minimum impact. And then we matured and streamlined all their JML processes, obviously moving from an old estate to a new end user workspace environment with Intune. We were able to leverage some of the new working processes that we can and make life easier and faster, as well as moving things on. So some key points about the situation and some standout moments. So we migrated a Sun device into some Spark device into an emulator in the cloud into Azure, which was the first time we'd seen that done, and there were no documentation that this had been done before, so it's believed to be a first full stop. This is 20-year-old kit that hadn't been turned off, so it was a massive risk. On the first day, we were able to turn it off just in case, so it was massive risk. We migrated from new to old equipment for resilience. So where we couldn't move things into the cloud, we were able to transfer something that had been turned off for 10 years to something that had been brought in. So at least we had resilience. So if it fell over, we rebuilt or replaced 2,500 end user laptops. We moved over 8K devices out of controlled domains. Boots on the ground, we had 18 sites where we deployed individuals to replace kit and update. We had expert management and migration of ancient apps such as Ingress. Some of this stuff that there isn't very many people around that know how it works. So we were able to leverage existing knowledge within the teams and learn to be able to move fast. So we remediated security risk across our server estate and end user estate. I think the graph almost had a vertical drop in the amount of vulnerabilities that we managed as we moved things, which was great news for the security team and ourselves. I have to apologize because one day we did have a drama with Sainsbury's, who was under the management of McKesson at the time, and we migrated all of the Sainsbury's stores pharmacies on a Saturday morning, which led to a downtime of about half an hour. So it was a massive task, but we had a small window of outage, but we came together and got it sorted. So if your prescription was late that day, it's probably our fault. So apologies. So yeah, and then we not only did we do that, we migrated 1,300 pharmacies to a new domain over the 12 months. It's probably closer over the 4 months that we started doing it, but that was, you know, moving those devices, getting equipment moved where needed, or rebuilding devices where needed to get people up and running and get people their meds from a new domain. We had to deal with challenges as well. So one of our providers had a SAN outage, and this was the week before Christmas. The SAN went down, and the week before Christmas is one of the two most important times of year, the busiest times of year for medication. I couldn't tell you how stressful it was because they couldn't get the SAN up and running for 2 to 3 days. So what Kocho aided us to do at the time was actually, rather than move this stuff, we're just going to put it in the cloud. So the guys worked all night, and we jumped that. It's a system called REM, and we moved it directly into the cloud from a physical SAN in a location, something that we hadn't anticipated on doing, but with the agile methodology and the get can do attitude, it moved directly into the cloud, and now it's pushed AAH to the forefront of technology, which I'll talk about in a minute. This was the motto that you've seen on screen that I've left for a while, and the motto was always, the day we were beaten was the day we weren't there, and that applies to that SAN outage. It was constant. We stayed on it as a team together, Kocho and Hello, for 72 hours at least before we got some traction, but we pushed together and we got to a solution. So where are we now? So we've got three separate organizations and three separate tenants. We did actually do a double jump on some of the tenants to move them into their own. So rather than one tenant for all three companies, we moved some of the other smaller companies out to their own tenants. So they did a double jump. We have three mature service offerings. So we've got consistent 95% and above SLAs for those organizations on all of their tickets. We further moved this provider to Kocho's own ITSM system. So they've decided to take on our ITSM. They've moved to our managed SOC as well. So, you know, they are that happy with our ability and the way that we've been working with them. They put all in. The final on-prem server moved over Christmas. So they, especially AAH, is a fully cloud environment. They took Cyber Essentials, and just as a last comment, I was with the CIO of AAH, and his feedback to his company on their all hands is that AAH is technically head and shoulders above all of their competition with their offerings. They are the only completely cloud pharmaceutical provider, and that allows them to leverage all the latest technologies to provide the best services, the newest services to their customers. So it is a massive shift from where they were. Not only have they been moved from their initial company, but we have progressed them and advanced them along the way in a very short period of time. And that's it from me. So I'm going to hand back over, and thank you very much for your time.
TJ. So I want to talk a bit about sort of what it means to be sort of a cloud-first business and some of the benefits that entail from that. But to kick things off, I want to ask a quick question of everyone in the audience. So I want to understand sort of where are you currently on your cloud adoption journey? Are you kind of still, with the old school cool sort of mainframes, maybe a couple sort of mechanical ENIAC machines thrown in there, or are you on the complete sort of other end of the scale? You know, are you in that sort of nirvana, sort of cloud utopia with, maybe you've sent your co-pilot sort of agent on your behalf to this webinar instead of you? Or sort of more realistically, are you somewhere in the middle? Whether that be kind of those early planning stages, have you kind of attempted, cloud transformation like, before and sort of maybe sort of encountered issues or roadblocks, or, sort of are you progressing well? It'd be great to sort of understand, where you are with that at the minute. So to kick things off, let's start with sort of defining what we mean by sort of first cloud, because I think there's a lot of confusion around that, or sort of a misinterpretation. But to put it really simply, sort of cloud first is all about sort of prioritizing and sort of preferring cloud solutions over other forms of solutions. Now, often we give these other forms of solutions some sort of name, whether it be sort of, on-premise, legacy, traditional, brownfield. I'm sure between all of us, we can come up with 100 different names for it. But it's about sort of, choosing cloud over those other solutions because of the inherent benefits that cloud technologies can bring. But crucially, it's not only choosing cloud technologies. And this is a point I'm going to sort of really have to emphasize in this, but it's all about sort of selecting sort of the right tool for the job. And in terms of kind of what that means for you as a business, sort of practically in terms of what benefits you'd gain from a strategy like this, there's kind of the usual cloud benefits that kind of every man and his dog has been shouting from the rooftops for about the last decade or so. But the real bit I wanted to highlight, that I see and sort of was perfectly highlighted by TJ and the Hallow case study earlier, was just the kind of sheer speed of transformation you can achieve. If we think about kind of other forms of transformation strategies or kind of IT strategies, kind of, you can do it to the old slow way where we're going to completely re-architecture something, but, we all know that kind of is, much more complex, it's much more costly, and sort of takes a lot longer to do. So, firstly, I just want to sort of talk about kind of, over sort of the past, few years, sort of talk about kind of the common mistakes or the common pitfalls that I see sort of organizations fall into when they set out on these sort of on these transformation journeys or sort of implement these strategies. I think the real sort of first sort of starting point is cloud first does not necessarily mean cloud only. And what I mean by that is often sort of I'll start speaking to an organization and the first thing I'll sort of ask is sort of, what is the reasoning behind this IT strategy? And, quite often what I'll find is that, people almost hand wave this with well, because cloud is better, cloud is magical, cloud's going to solve all of our problems, without really sort of addressing the realities of, the situation that they're in. So firstly, just kind of, let's set the scene, the difference between sort of cloud first, cloud native. Cloud first is very much about sort of choosing, what is the best solution for a particular problem. So it lends itself really nicely for kind of, migration or, digital transformation projects where you have a huge amount of on-premise legacy systems, whatever it might be, and you're looking to, bring those efficiencies, bring those cost savings, whatever it might be. And really, it's all about sort of doing that through incremental improvements. So rather than kind of re-platforming everything in one go, which can be difficult, it's all about sort of, going for the low-hanging fruit. Rather than just, again, sort of we take the example of re-architecting an application, we're not going to start, rewriting everything from scratch with, latest container technology. We're going to start with the easy elements. So we're going to, lift and shift that, machine up into the cloud. And then from there, we can start taking advantage of, the efficiency savings in not having to manage that infrastructure anymore. But then we can take that one step further with tools like sort of Azure Arc that allow us to tap in and provide us sort of more management capabilities. And then over time, we might transition that over to sort of, sort of a native Azure database. And we might transform that again sort of in the future into some other form of solution. But it's always about sort of, going for those low-hanging fruits, making kind of lots of little but sort of many sort of improvements over time. Whereas cloud native, it's very much still a valid strategy, but only really for those, either much sort of leaner, smaller organizations where they're sort of very much starting, afresh or in a greenfield environment. For organizations in those situations, then cloud native makes perfect sense. But it's not necessarily the right decision if you're a large enterprise that has, lots of legacy technologies, and you're looking to really achieve sort of the benefits of the cloud. And kind of to sort of paint an example of why this can be sort of an issue. What I find is, we'll be in a room sort of having a discussion about, potential solutions or potential, sort of design decisions that, whatever it might be. And often there'll be someone in the room who'll just go, no, we can't do that. We're a cloud, only organization, or, we're a cloud native organization. And, again, so you dig into it and you say, well, why is that? And they don't necessarily have an answer. And really, it's sort of, just because you can do it doesn't really mean you should necessarily. I think sort of, all of the cloud vendors out there have done a great job of sort of, shouting out the benefits of cloud. And people have kind of adopted all this almost sort of cult of cloud. Everything has to be cloud. We can't even think about on-premise. We can't think about other solutions. And really sort of with a closed mindset like that, you're going to introduce sort of a lot of friction. Taken sort of again to the Halo use case, sort of as an example, if we had to re-architect everything sort of one go, I think probably we'd still be in, the initial sort of design phase. I think we would sort of, massively overrun. I don't think it would have been anywhere near sort of successful if we didn't have this sort of cloud-first strategy. And then so I suppose my next sort of moving on to my sort of second point is, a cloud-first strategy shouldn't just be an IT strategy. Often, I think sort of IT can sort of make the mistake of siloing their work away from the rest of the business. When in reality, when you're sort of taking on these large projects, it really is key to sort of get other elements of the business involved. Now, it might be sort of, as basic as trying to understand, what skills do you need in the business? If cloud is a new area for you, do you need to do some upskilling in Azure technologies to be able to sort of pick this up and maintain these solutions? How are you going to support, your in-house developers as they start to build cloud, solutions? On top of that, again, with sort of cloud vendors shouting about the benefits of how wonderfully secure it is, that's not necessarily the case. Now, they take a lot off your plate in terms of maintaining the platform, but there are still risks inherent to cloud. And, the only way to tackle that is with sort of a, sort of a good governance sort of strategy to that. And that involves acknowledging those risks. So again, that's not necessarily something IT can all, do just by themselves in their sort of, fiefdom or in their silo. It is really key to get those other parts of the business involved, in this journey. And then sort of, I suppose the last bit I want to talk about is actually getting value out of a cloud-first strategy. Because I think organizations have, can sometimes make the mistake of, thinking, well, we'll throw everything in the cloud, forget about it, job done. We're in the cloud, where are my, benefits? Where are those cost savings? Where are those efficiency improvements? And that's not necessarily the case. If you've lifted and shifted everything into, from on-premise servers into Azure virtual machines, you might not get all those benefits, that you see and you hear about. You only get that from, transforming those services. So a lift and shift might be the first part, of your sort of journey, but sort of following that up with kind of, gradual, sort of, not necessarily sort of re-architectures, but sort of, gradual improvements, is how you're going to get the most out of, this strategy. And yeah, I suppose just kind of emphasize again, sort of cloud native is a difficult thing to do if you're going to re-architect everything. We're going to go back to the drawing boards, start from scratch. Cloud first is all about kind of this, slow, gradual improvements. That's how you're going to get to the best success out of these sort of larger, transformation sort of work streams. And so I suppose to sort of sum up, we talked about what cloud first is, just sort of highlight, what you know, what do we not mean by cloud first? Because cloud first isn't a cloud only strategy. It's not a throw it in the cloud and forget. And it's not sort of an end goal by any means either. I suppose just to kind of paint what cloud first, being cloud first means for an organization, I want to give you sort of another example of where we've applied the strategy and it's sort of delivered sort of real world value and real world benefits to an organization. So in this scenario, we had an organization. They were very much sort of old school. Very much everything was on prem, other than sort of Microsoft 365. They had moved to using sort of SharePoint Online, using kind of all of those sort of teams as well. But all of their core infrastructure, all their core applications, very much on premise, and this was causing them a huge nightmare because everything was sort of siloed away from each other. Nothing was in sync from one app to another, and it made reporting as well as kind of just using these applications really difficult. There were just inconsistency everywhere. There'd be a terminology used in one place and a completely different form of terminology used in a different application, and people sort of in silos developed their own ways of working, and they very much didn't want anyone to touch their element of what they saw as their own application or their own domain, and it made things really difficult. So that they had tried to migrate some of these applications into the cloud. So whether it's replacing it with some form of SaaS solution, or whether it's just kind of trying to re-implement this in in sort of Azure or anything like that, they had kind of tried everything and sort of failed at every corner, as it were. So why we got involved? So they wanted to sort of improve their reporting capabilities, because at the minute, initially, reports were taking a huge amount of time and effort to sort of compile. So they were very much kind of exporting out CSV files, manual SQL queries to pull out this data, transform it all, stick it together in into one sort of CSV file. But the problem with that is, all the values are different, so they had to have this own sort of mapping, and they were manually rewriting things. It was an absolute sort of nightmare. So reports were taking kind of almost a week to generate, sort of on a, for even just like a basic, even for the most basic of reports. So they sort of got us involved to try and kind of help them build out sort of a new data platform, with the idea being that, we want to tap into these on-premise systems and try to sort of improve things. So we did just that. So using the kind of the Azure data analytics platform, we deployed out, all the usual suspects insofar as sort of data factory and data bricks for that sort of, data transformation capability. We built a sort of an Azure data lake to create a one single source of truth for all of their data. But what we also did was built out this integration platform. And this was sort of, taking the approach of sort of cloud first. We weren't going to re-architect everything for them, but we were going to create a cloud-based solution that helped them sort of plug a gap, and it then allowed them to, or sort of allow them to overcome some of the roadblocks that they had previously encountered when trying to migrate those applications. So this integration platform built on Azure integration services. So that's everything from sort of Azure API management to sort of Azure functions and Azure logic apps. It's very much kind of a wide toolkit with everything from kind of low code. So if you use Power Automate, Azure logic apps is the Azure equivalent of that, but we can manage it like it's a piece of infrastructure. And we've got the more advanced capabilities of Azure functions, and that allows us to write much more advanced sort of workflows. We can essentially just write it as code, not the visual workflow. So we use this integration platform to basically allow systems to synchronize data between themselves. So there's an initial sort of exercise around sort of mapping, setting a standard for their data. So, making sure sort of all the applications are in sync. They're using the same sort of entity schemas between them. They're using kind of consistent naming, consistent values across all of them. And the way we did that was with this integration platform. So using the Azure platform, we were able to build out these tools. We then sort of connected it to their on-premise network using sort of a site-to-site VPN connection. So we could almost, it's almost as if this solution was sitting right on-prem alongside these applications. It was able to sort of tap into them, extract the data out using the lots of weird and very obscure methods. Some of them were simple as SQL, but a lot of them, nowhere near that. And using those sort of tools like Databricks, we were able to transform the data into one consistent sort of format. We then stored it in data lake, and then that became kind of a single source of truth. But what sort of happened sort of after we implemented the solution and we sort of managed to sort of improve their reporting capabilities was, firstly, rather than reports taking like a week to generate, they suddenly became almost real time. They could sort of refresh on demand and get the latest data out of these systems. Not only that, we now had this sort of single source of truth for all of their data. So when other parts of the business wanted to either implement a new application or, whether it be sort of generating some form, some new form of report or wanting to perform some sort of analysis on the business, rather than having, again, sort of working in silos, trying to pull out these data out of all these different systems, we had one place where we could sort of manage that data, and it sort of really did sort of unlock sort of a huge amount of value. What would have taken days or weeks was now taking sort of hours to do. And on top of that, sort of the benefits of when the data team sort of invests in sort of improving the sort of data available, the benefits of that was experienced by the the rest of the business. So whether it was sort of finance taking a look at this data to sort of do some analysis on the business or whatever it might be. But kind of following on from this, what we sort of discovered is that this integration platform suddenly allowed us to solve some of those roadblocks that we previously, or that they had previously had when trying to migrate their on these legacy applications. Because now we had this integration platform that was taking this data in, cleaning it, turning into one source of truth. We could use it to do it, to do that in reverse. So take that clean data and push it back into those on-premise systems. And once we had that data sort of all synced, it really did sort of unblock a lot of the problems with lifting and shifting these applications into newer SaaS versions. We were no longer dependent on kind of all of those macros and weird integrations that TJ was talking about earlier. That was very much the case here. And yeah, I mean, in terms of kind of the sort of licensing cost of all the various tools that they had, as well as kind of the kind of compute the compute and kind of the human resource costs behind generating this reporting capability. After implementing this, as I mentioned there, there were cost savings of more than 35%. 35%. It was kind of more towards the 40% there. And that's only sort of continued to grow since then as they implement kind of new, more modern technologies like sort of Azure OpenAI Studio, building these sort of AI sort of solutions off of that core data platform. So I'll leave it there. So that was sort of a brief overview of what it means to be sort of a cloud-first business. And next up, I'll hand over to Alex to talk about all things cybersecurity. Alex,
thank you. Thank you, Andrew. So as we have heard from TJ and Andrew, cloud adoption does bring a lot of benefits to organization, but at the same time comes with a lot of challenges, which means security should be at a constant back of our mind during the journey in the processes. And Microsoft and Azure provides a lot of features and capabilities to support the journey and adoption of the cloud or adoption of the hybrid environment. And today we'll cover some of those features and capabilities. We'll start with Azure Arc solution. In today's IT landscape, dominated by the hybrid and multi-cloud environments, organizations face the challenge of efficiently managing resources across diverse platforms. Azure Arc offers an innovative solution by extending Azure management capability to an on-premises and multi-cloud resources, providing a unified platform for seamless operations. Centrally manage all of your onboarded servers within Azure portal, regardless of their physical location, whether they're on premises or in Azure and other clouds. Apply and enforce governance policies across your hybrid environments to ensure compliance with corporate or regulatory standards. Collect and analyze logs and metrics from onboarded services to monitor performance and health of them. Azure Arc is vital because it enables to centralize management and governance of your entire IT infrastructure, whether it's on premises, multi-cloud, or at the edge, using familiar Azure tools. By unifying operations, enhancing security and compliance, and allowing consistent deployment across diverse environments, Azure Arc simplifies complexity and a strategic solution worth considering for modern IT management. But it is important to understand that Azure Arc is just one component of a bigger picture, and the main dashboard for us is Defender for Cloud that underpins it all. So we have to understand the difference between them. Azure Arc primarily focuses on extending Azure management capabilities to non-Azure machine, allowing you to manage on-premises servers as if they were in Azure, while Defender for Cloud is cloud-native security solution that monitors and protects your Azure resources, including those brought in through Azure Arc, providing advanced threat detection, security management features across your entire cloud environment. Azure Arc acts as a bridge to connect non-Azure machines to the Azure platform for unified management, including configuration management, updates, and policy enforcements, whereas Defender for Cloud analyzes security posture, identifying threats, and recommends remediation action on those connected machines, whether they're native Azure resources or brought through Azure Arc. Microsoft Defender for Cloud is a cloud-native application protection platform, or CNAPP for short, that is made up of security measures and practices that are designed to protect cloud-based applications from various cyber threats and vulnerabilities. Defender for Cloud combines the capabilities of development security operations, or DevOps for short, solution that unifies security management at the code level across multi-cloud and multi-pipeline environments. A cloud security posture management, or CSPM for short, solution that surfaces actions that you can take to prevent those breaches. A cloud workload protection platform, or CWPP, with specific protection for servers, containers, storages, databases, and other workloads. But if we have a look, even Defender for Cloud is just one piece of a much bigger complex ecosystem. And as we're aware, Microsoft ecosystem consists of several silos that all come together and merge and communicate between each other. On the right-hand side, we can see Defender for Cloud. But on the left-hand side, we can see our XDR, which is still important to mention. And that's your protection against specific entities, whether it's user devices, emails, cloud application, or on-prem servers. And both of them seamlessly integrate with our Microsoft SIEM solution, Microsoft Sentinel, to give you that visibility cross-platform, whether it's Defender for Cloud or Defender XDR. And of course, any third-party solutions that you decide to ingest into Microsoft Sentinel all come together through a centralized SIEM solution. But Microsoft decided to take it a step further, and with the recent announcements of last year, we've got what it's called a unified security solution. A unified protection and extended capability merges together Defender XDR and Microsoft Sentinel, and by merging them ensures that you have access to the extended collection of tables and you're not limited by where is the data residing, whether it's coming through third party and all the logs are residing in Microsoft Sentinel and Log Analytic Workspace that underpins it, or natively collected by Defender XDR from all the defenders. By them coming together, you will have access to entire tables behind to query the logs across more than 130 tables across all your sources of data, whether it's from other clouds, whether it's from third party or natively from Microsoft. But most importantly, not just the data that comes together, is the capabilities as well. And some with the recent announcements, we do have Sentinel-powered threat intelligence that is moving into Defender portal and becomes what Microsoft calls it now, Intel Management, unifying threat intelligence features across both platforms. Structured threat intelligence information expression objects support is now in preview within Defender XDR. In addition, we've got what Microsoft has called case management. This feature represents the first step towards delivering a unified security-focused case management experience that centralizes rich collaboration, customization, evidence collection, and reporting across SecOps workloads, removing the reliance on external ticketing system. And not to forget, amazing capability of Defender XDR, automatic attack disruption, which doesn't rely anymore on users' involvement or eyes on a screen 24/7. We let the system do the action when it's deemed to be necessary, when the threat is emerging, and potentially there is no one that is currently reviewing your alerts and incident. Defender XDR will step in and ensures to disrupt the attack. This capability will extend to Sentinel and third-party solution. And as it currently stands, any SAP applications are currently able to extend, and Defender XDR can automatically disrupt any attacks against your SAP applications. Given that it is just a recent announcement, there will be more and more third-party solutions that will have this capability. And most importantly, to understand that all that can be covered by Copilot for Security that will work across the platforms, and of course, with the unified security protection, everything is in one portal, which means you do not have to anymore switch between different screens like we've seen in that Microsoft ecosystem. You don't have to go anymore for Defender for Cloud. You don't have to go anymore through Defender for Sentinel. Everything can be done through Defender XDR because all those platforms are merging as one. And that's how Microsoft security comes together to ensure that your cloud adoption and cloud transformation is done securely with the full visibility and reporting by collecting and storing the logs behind it. Thank you.
Okay. Firstly, if you've got any questions about anything we've talked about today, feel free to put that in the chat now. I'll give a moment for people to ask any questions. But if you do want a more detailed follow-up, then feel free to get in touch. We're more than happy to arrange our pre-sales call with one of the architects, whether it's myself, Alex, or any one of our team. So I'll just give a minute for any questions. Looks like it might be all quiet today, but if you do have any questions, then please feel to reach out and we can follow up. But otherwise, thank you very much all for attending.
Thank you.